Welcome to Between the Reads, where Black books are shared and celebrated all year long. I'm your host, Audra Russell. There are so many great things going on this year as I continue to amplify Black stories, but I can't do it without your support. Please consider heading over to patreon.com/betweenthereads and becoming a member, or make a one-time donation at www.ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. Are you ready, Boos and Bros? Then sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Candace Nola is a Pittsburgh author with 3 published novels currently on Amazon. Breach was her debut novel, published in November 2019, followed by Beyond the Breach, published December 22, 2020. Her third novel, Hank Flynn, was published in July of 2021. She also had a short story published in the Secondhand Creeps anthology in May of 2021 that she co-authored with Sam Hill of the UK. She is a new member of the Horror Authors Guild and recently joined the House of Stitched magazine as an editor and writer. She began her horror website in January of 2020 to use as an author website and to help promote other indie authors in the industry. Her interview series, The Dark Dozen, was well received in fall of 2020, and she began to do more book reviews, author interviews, and new release features on her website. Original content was added along with a newsletter, and Uncomfortably Dark Horror has morphed into the go-to place for the newest in horror book news. Her novel, Beyond the Breach, won the Novel of the Year award for 2021 from the Horror Author Guild, and her debut novel, Breach, placed second for Debut Novel of the Year, also for the 2021 Horror Author Guild Awards. Bishop, her latest novel, was released in March of this year. Candace, welcome to Between the Reads.
Hello.
You are quite accomplished. You've been doing a lot.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. You got quite a few awards over the last year, starting the website and everything.
Yeah.
I'm quite impressed. Let's just get right into this book, Bishop.
Okay.
Heartstopping. Where did the idea for this book come from?
An old friend of mine actually had the idea for me to do a werebear instead of the traditional werewolf.
Okay.
And I liked it. And I kind of decided to run with the whole lore behind the Native American shape-shifting lore and added in another creature also heavy into that type of the lore as well. I don't want to spoil it or give it away.
Right.
But I thought, well, if I'm going to put him in here, what am I going to put him against? So I had to get something else in there that would match in strength and in sort of excitement level, not to mention the fear, because I wouldn't want to face either one in the woods, a werebear or the other. And I was like, well, let me see what I can do with this. And we were talking about it, and I just kind of ran with it. And the book is actually named after him. So that's actually his first name, and that's what we named the main character in the book.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, and it's a young girl and her mom, and they get lost. Well, not lost, but they're missing. They went on an adventure into the Alaskan wilderness right as the thaw, which is when all the snow and everything starts to melt. They were told not to, but they did it anyway. Now, they are both survivalists. They had all the backpacks and, they were prepared. But something happens. We don't know what. We don't find out until later in the book, but they're missing.
Yes.
And so Troy, the uncle, has to go into the woods and find them. And that's where we meet the werebear and the Wendigo. Now, so you mentioned this a little bit. So is that actual folklore, the werebear and the Wendigo? That's actual folklore? That's...
Yeah.
Okay. So how much research did you have to do to...
Quite a bit. My main research was on, first of all, the state of Alaska.
Okay, right.
Never been there. So, a lot of research on the state itself, everything from what the parks were like, what type of trees grew there, how long the winters lasted, the thaws, was it really nighttime for 6 months, like all of that, different little things. As far as the lore behind the Werebear goes, there's quite a few Native American legends where they speak of being able to shapeshift, and they don't always shift into the same animal all the time.
Okay.
A lot of the times it has to do with what they feel is their spirit guide, which usually is in the shape of an animal.
Okay.
Sometimes it's passed down through the bloodlines from father to son, and that's just what that bloodline will change into. So I took a couple and I kind of made my own blend of the different types of lore to get us to the point to where he would always change into the werebear rather than a full bear, rather than every time he would change into an eagle or a deer or whatever. He just chose this one and that's where he stayed. So with him, it was a bloodline thing.
Okay.
So that's why he changed into the creature he changed. But due to his age when he changed, and if you've read it all the way through, you get his whole backstory a little bit further on in the book. So due to him changing so young and so violently, he didn't learn how to change back for a long time. So he lived as a full bear for a very long time. And then he realized he could phase between man werebear and full bear. So instead of him just going from one to the other, I gave him like 3 stages rather than just the one.
Right.
Which I liked a lot more. And I also changed a lot about how the transformation takes place from your traditional werewolf. You know, usually when you see it in the movies or you're reading it, it's that split second change and they like start out their skin and all of a sudden it's like, no.
Yeah.
That's gotta hurt.
Right.
And of course, you know, they explain that away too with different types of lore and different things. But I wanted to really play up the fact that, one, this is a horror story, first of all. And this is something that he has to make a decision to consciously transform every time he makes that change, because it's a sacrifice. It's painful. It's a process. It's not instant. It's not, you know, a couple seconds and I'm good. It takes a minute or two, and he's got to be prepared for that change. You know, so that's my own creation, the whole change process. I've never seen that anywhere. I've not read anything else like that. I just wanted to really play up the fact that this is something, it's not an easy thing. It's not just wham bam and I'm a beast. It's okay, I gotta do this.
It's a whole process.
Right, you know, and it takes a toll on him every time. You know, it's not just glamour and glory, you know, I'm this beast now. It's
right.
What is it going to cost me to do this? And am I willing to put myself through this in order to change again, in order to do whatever is being asked of me?
Right.
You know, so there's a lot more to him than you really see up front.
Yeah.
So.
Now, with the Wendigo, because of the description with the claws and all of that, was that how it's actually described in lore, or did you also make that up as well?
That is actually how they are described.
With the smell and all of that.
Yeah. So, um, the general lore all states that the Wendigos, they were human once until they succumbed to the temptation of eating human flesh. Whereas the Wendigo infection, disease, curse would fall upon them, or they could be bitten by another Wendigo to be left alive to change. When that happens, they are infected by this transformation of sorts, but it takes time. So not only do they have this constant hunger to just consume, which also consumes them, like all of their fat, all of their muscle, their tissues, everything just gets consumed to where they turn into this almost emaciated skeletal sort of creature, but they eat so much that their mass continues to grow. So they get bigger, taller, stronger, their bone structure continues to grow, the antlers and things begin to sprout, all of those different things that they can't contain anymore within their once human frame, but they're never content. They're never full. They will eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, and that's the curse of Wendigo. But they retain enough of their human side that they begin to enjoy the hunt. They'll play with their victims. They'll track you. Once they have your scent, they will track you forever, if that's what it takes. They'll track you 100 miles, if that's Once they have your scent, they will not stop. It's just, they're going to get you no matter where you go. So that's another thing they like. They like to toy with you because they feed off of that fear. So that's why you don't see him immediately. He's toying with them. He already has chosen which one he's going to toy with, which one he's going to just consume. So there's a whole lot going on in the book, and there's something that's not good for anybody.
It's really like the first half of the book is very interesting, but it's like, you're just getting to the process of getting to the woods, but then you get to that middle part and it's just like,
oh boy.
I think I held my breath the whole time from the middle to the end, and I read it in the daytime and I was still like, my cat jumped up on me while I was reading and I almost threw him across the room. I was like, bruh, please don't do that. So it was very well written, and I'm impressed that you've never been to Alaska, because that was going to be my next question, because everything is so vivid. I could see the woods, I could hear the sounds, I could feel, the coldness, and just everything that you described. I take my hat off to you, because I would think that somebody who is very familiar with the Alaskan wilderness wrote this book. So.
I've spent a lot of time in the woods, and in the cold, and in the snow, and in the cold, snowy woods. And yeah, never in Alaska, but I am on the East Coast. I'm in Pennsylvania.
Well, yeah, I was going to say,
winter, we do get the cold, we get the snow and all that. And when I was a kid, we did spend a lot of time outside in the snow and in the woods and hiking and all that. So I'm very familiar with nature itself and a lot of those little things that I put in there. But the wilderness of Alaska was new, and so many different trees and the landscapes, and you could be in one environment for a mile, and then the next mile you're in a totally different environment, which I thought was really interesting. I spent probably 2 months just reading up on the state and watching videos and aerial views and guided tours of the different parks and the different areas and the landscapes and when I was writing it, I actually had those up and was looking at the videos and the pictures and just like always had that landscape in my head while I was writing it. So,
Okay.
which helped a lot.
I, yes, it did. Because, like I said, I would have thought that you traveled to Alaska, but it was very well done.
Thank you.
So now, Bishop and Troy, they do have some similarities as far as family goes. Why did you choose to make this connection between the two of them?
Because I knew how I was going to end it, but I also had to show the isolation of the one man and how wounded he was, how non-trusting he was of the world around him, everyone around him. And Troy has been through a lot. His sister's all he has left. Wounded too. Has a lot of his own little issues he needs to deal with. But deep down, Troy's a really good guy. He would move heaven and earth for his sister and his niece. And I wanted the two of them to connect on a deeper level because I wanted Troy to see some of himself in him. And I wanted Bishop to start to view Troy as maybe a friend. Maybe somebody finally I can trust. And ultimately, you find out in the book that he doesn't have a choice.
Right.
It's trust him with this, or do I need to do something violent to keep my secret? Like, what does Bishop do once Troy discovers the secret?
Right, yeah. And I like the way that, when they first, interact, and you could tell that Bishop just is, not trusting and kind of curt and everything. And then that little moment where Troy is eating and he takes his trash and tucks it into his backpack. It doesn't just throw it on the ground. And that's kind of Bishop's cue. He sees the humanity of him in that moment, and that he cares about the land and that kind of thing. And that kind of opens the door for him to kind of, start to trust him a little bit.
Yeah. Because he's very used to, people coming up there and just destroying things and leaving trash and not respectful of the environment, of nature, of the villagers around, of the Indians around. He's tired. Bishop, for the most part, is just tired of just everything. And he wasn't raised in society like everyone else was. He was an outcast. He was sort of like on his own for most of the time. And every time he would bring himself to the edges of town, all he really would see would be the things he didn't like.
Yeah, right.
So
exactly. So, what was your favorite scene to write in this book?
Oh man, my favorite. I think one of my favorite scenes was Casey on her first night alone, as she's going through her pack and making use of the different survival things that she had with her. And kind of putting her in a light where she's scared, but she's also resourceful. And for a teen, she could be freaking out, but she's kind of like holding herself together by doing what she knows and what she's already used to and what she's there to do, which was part of that was to try out all her new survival things. So she was just like, okay, I'm going to get this stuff out and I'm going to get through this night and then I'm going to make a plan to move on. And then I think my next scene was when the Wendigo discovers Aaron in the cave.
When I tell you, I had to take a minute after that scene, and that thing whispered, "There's no God here." I was like, oh, okay, let me just put this book down for just a hot minute. My heart was thumping. I'm like, not only is it this creature, but it talks. And she couldn't see it. And when she flicked on the light for that hot second,
Yep.
I was like, no, don't do it. Don't turn on the light. Just, if you're going to go, just go and not know what it looks like, because I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I actually had to stop after I wrote it a little bit because I was like, oh man, 'cause it gave me the chills too. And I was like, that's going to go over so good.
Oh my gosh. So well. I literally was like, don't flick the lighter on, sis. Don't. We don't want to see what's coming. We really don't.
You know, that's one of those scenes from the horror movies where you're like, don't go in that room.
Right. Yeah. Like, don't do it. Don't do it. You know it's there. And then I was mad at her, too, because she just firing all 3 shots of the gun, just all in the air.
She panicked, yeah.
I'm just like, come on now. I'm going to hold on. I'm going to try and shoot this thing. I'm going to hold on to my bullets and the gun. She just is...
Yeah. Yeah. I think I wanted her to be something that I think the majority of us would be.
Mm-hmm.
You're a mom, you're smart, you're worried about, your child out there, you're injured, there's not much you can do. You're resourceful, you were prepared, but you're also very badly hurt.
Right.
It's freezing. You have no idea what's happening, and there's this thing all of a sudden in your face that you've never encountered before. I feel like any one of us would have had that reaction to where we just blank out and we just react purely in fear rather than, okay, let me pull my shit together. And,
right.
She's
because being honest, I probably would have passed out.
But it's a different thing. Like, I wanted her to be human. She's not a trained cop. She's not a trained ranger. She's not a trained, that training would not have kicked in. I didn't want her to be this superhero type of woman who did everything right. And, I'm going to take aim and I'm going to kill it on the first shot. Well, because then that's the end of my story.
Well, true.
But I feel like I wanted her to be as human as the rest of us. And I feel like no matter how smart and resourceful she is, when you're faced with something that horrific, you're going to freak out like any of the rest of us.
Right.
And that's what I wanted her to do. Like, she's human at the end of the day. For all of her skills, she's still human. And that fear kicks right in. And
yep. Took over.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So, did you choose horror, or did horror choose you?
Oh, horror chose me from way, way back. Horror has been my thing since I was 5, 6.
So, what was the moment that it chose you?
I had these records when I was a kid. The little record in a suitcase, that old stuff. I had one of those, and I had a bunch of records, and I had several of these stories on record, and they were like Hitchcock for kids,
okay,
something like that. And on this one record, I had, I don't know, there must have been 4 stories, maybe 6 minutes long each one. They weren't long. And one of these stories, man, it's just stuck in my head. Just creepy, and I used to listen to it over and over and over, and I would turn my lights up. Middle of the afternoon, of course,
Right.
I would close the curtains, and I would turn the lights out and get under my blanket, and I would just let it play. I'm like, oh, this is so creepy. And every time, like, it gave me chills, and I knew the ending. Like, I could recite it for you, like, word for word.
Right.
But every time, it just gave me that chill, and I was like, ooh, like, just, you know. And I went on from there, and I had these other records I would listen to that all had the same type of, like, horror stories on it. Then I listened to a recording of Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart.
Ooh, child.
Done. All in.
Woo.
All in. From that day, I devoured everything I could find by Poe. I have everything that has ever been published of his, every collection, anthology, you name it. It's upstairs in my library. Like, I've read everything that Poe has ever done.
But you need to come to Maryland because he's, from here and his grave is here. I went to it. It was creepy.
That is on my list of things to do here in the next year.
Yeah.
And then, like, from Poe, I moved on to Lovecraft, and by 10, 11, I was on Stephen King.
Okay.
And then stayed with Stephen King for a long time. Moved into Clive Barker. And then horror movies, of course. My dad was a big horror nut. I was raised on the old black and white movies and all the classics, Dracula and Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde and Frankenstein and you name it. And of course, all the old movies from the 50s like Attack of the Blob and all of those.
Yeah.
He was we either watched like sci-fi or horror, and when Dad was home, Dad ran the TV, so you didn't want to watch it. You were in your room or you went outside or did whatever. And like, horror has always been just a big part of our life, and weekends were made for Friday night horror movies. Yeah, so I don't think it was really a choice when it came down to what I wanted to write. I always knew that if I became a writer, it was going to be horror.
Okay. So, tell me what being a black horror author means to you.
I don't know. I think I'm still trying to find that out.
Okay.
Learning that. I've only been out here as an author since 2019. Lifelong dream, but something I never tried to pursue professionally or even realistically until 2019. And I think for me, especially in the horror field right now, I do know that there's not many black horror authors out here. There's a handful of us, but there's not a lot yet. And then you add in the black female horror author. And then we'll tack one more on because I'm also a extreme horror author.
Okay.
So not only do I do mainstream horror, but I do a lot of just out there, very violent, very graphic, very extreme. So far, I've not had any negative experiences based on the fact that either I'm black or I'm a woman or any of that. I've been pretty widely accepted by everybody that I'm aware of so far. I have a lot of black author friends now from just networking and stuff on Facebook and all of that. I have a slew of white friends and Jewish friends and German friends, and I don't really stick to any one grouping ever. I never have. I'm adopted.
Okay.
And I'm also mixed.
Okay.
So I was raised in a white home, in a white household, white town, white school. At 18, I moved to a predominantly black town, and my friend group shifted from being, small town, white people my age to being urban young black kids my age, 18, 19. young adults, and that was a whole new experience because that was
Right.
not a culture that I had been raised in,
Mhm.
but it was a culture that I was very much accepted in
Mhm.
into, even though for a little bit I felt like an outcast in that group as well,
Mhm.
even
Mhm.
though I wasn't, but I
Right.
did because I wasn't raised there. So
Mhm.
my experience has actually been a little bit of the opposite rather than, I guess, the opposite of the norm or what the normal expectation
Okay.
is. Because I went from moving from just an all white grouping in town and everything to an all black grouping
Mhm.
and friend circle and, all of
Mhm.
that. And then as you grow, I just learned how to sort of blend all of that. And I've never, I don't view anyone as black, white, Indian, whatever race you are.
Mhm.
If you're good to me, I'm good to you. I don't
Okay.
classify anybody based on their gender or their beliefs or any sort of thing. Have I had negative experiences based on my race? Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Most of my childhood.
Right. Right.
Because, it's just how things go when you're in a very small town like that, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of that. And it
Mhm.
was no worse than any other small town in America where black is not a
Right.
predominant race.
Mhm.
But have I had those experiences? Absolutely. Am I having them now based on me being black or me being an author or being treated like an outcast because I'm a black author or a black horror author? Not that I can say definitively right now. If I'm being snubbed behind closed doors,
Mhm.
I haven't been told about it yet.
Okay.
So
Okay.
far, with the people that I know, the people that I network with, everyone has been very welcoming to me. Everyone has been friendly and just reaching out and welcoming me to, hey, let me know if you need help. And hey, it was great to meet you here. And,
Mhm.
can't wait to see your next book. And I've had it from all sides. Everybody
Okay.
that I know, no matter what side of the culture you're on or the race or the gender you're on, I've been accepted by pretty much everybody as far as I can tell. And I think that's because I accept everybody for who they are and as they are.
Okay. All
So,
right. So tell us about your website. Give us the name and the impetus behind it.
okay. My website is
Mhm.
uncomfortablydark.com.
Mhm.
The name comes from, well, one, uncomfortably, because I'm uncomfortable all the time. I'm
Okay.
probably the most awkward person you'd ever want to meet. So I'm always uncomfortable.
Uh-huh.
And of course, dark because, well, I write very dark stuff.
Mhm.
And I didn't want horror to be in the name of it at first because I mix a lot of what I write too. So I'm not just
Mhm.
strictly horror. I do some sci-fi, some fantasy, some strange, bizarre stuff.
Okay.
But all of it is still has that sort of horror element, that fear. All of it kind of takes shape in the dark. So I just combined the two so you have uncomfortably dark.
Okay.
I thought it was catchy enough that, people would easily remember it. It's a little bit long, it's a mouthful, but at the same time, you're going to remember it.
Right. Exactly.
So I also wanted a way to be more relevant in more of a presence in the community itself, not
Mhm.
just an author.
Okay.
So I wanted my website to be mostly about the community, not just about me.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll find me on there and my
Mhm.
books and what I've written, but my website is split out into pages, so you'll see everything about the horror community as a whole. You're
Mhm.
going to find author interviews out there every week. You're going to find horror book reviews every week. I have two viewers on my team that help read and review books every week, and they each
Mhm.
have a page. Um, I try to list anything new that's coming out as I
Okay.
can or as publishers want me to. I will work with them and list their release dates and their new releases and author interviews. If they have a new author out who's about to publish something, they'll contact
Okay.
me and say, "Hey, I got author so and so out with a new book. Can you do an interview with them?" And yeah, and I try to schedule them pretty close to their release date. If not on it, it'll be that weekend.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, you'll find a lot about who's who in the horror world itself if you look at the Rusty Chair interviews, which
Okay.
because uncomfortably dark, so you got to be in an uncomfortable chair, right?
All right.
So we have the Rusty Chair, which is where I do my weekly interviews. And
Okay.
then if I have a special event, like right now, I have the Dark Dozen interviews, which runs every fall from September through the end of November, and you'll find those on its own page.
Okay.
So you have that, and then you have the Rusty Chair, which will be just random author interviews, new releases. Um, Somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, I need some help getting some eyes on this. Can we do
Right.
a feature? Can we do an interview?" Sure. And then there are 3 review pages too. The main book review page is mine.
Okay.
It's what I read and reviewed for each week, and then each one of my reviewers has their own page.
Okay.
So you'll see all those. And then the Dark Dozen interviews are tied directly into the anthologies that I publish every year.
Okay.
So if you're in the Dark Dozen fall interviews, you'll be invited to be in the anthology for that year.
Nice.
And all of this is planned out ahead of time, very far ahead of time. And you have to make
I know.
this and invite people to do the interview. And if they're interested, the contingency is if you're going to do the interview, you are agreeing to write a story for the anthology, and this is how that works. And so far, people have loved it. The anthology I published last year actually won the Splatterpunk Award for Anthology of the Year just in August. So that just happened.
See, this is what I mean. You've been out
And
here
that was
since
my
2019, and you got all these awards.
yeah. That was my first one that I've done, and I was very, very proud of that. It drove me to tears a couple times because I was like, "Oh, I have this big idea, and it'll be fine." And ooh, man, ooh, talk about the learning experience. But yeah, I
Right.
got through it, and it turned out to be a beautiful book, and the stories in it are amazing, and they are extreme. It is an extreme horror anthology,
Okay.
not for
Okay.
the faint of heart.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it won the Splatterpunk Anthology of the Year award, and
Okay.
I am working on releasing the second one, which should actually go to print by early next week, and then
Okay.
those will be releasing November 26th.
Okay.
So that's in the works.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of anthologies, tell us about the Murder anthology project that you're a part of.
Murder Anthology is being published by Valhalla. It's a publishing company owned by Adam Messer. Sorry.
That's okay.
And that one is based on the concept for the anthology, as we were told, was true crime stories.
Okay.
So they don't have to be actual true crimes, but the publisher wanted the stories to be written in the vein of as if it was something that could be a true crime.
Okay.
Something that you could have read about in the news or that somebody would have done a documentary on. Something that would have played out like a very realistic sort of event. So I have a story in there.
Okay.
And
All right.
I think I nailed it.
All right. All right.
It's violent, but it is set in the 50s, and it is set loosely on a serial killer who
Okay.
lived in this small town in West Virginia where the story is actually based.
Okay.
The location of my story is actually set at his house.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there's a lot of my story that's directly connected to the events that took place, as far as at least the location and different things. And then there are a couple of details for the location that are actually part of the history behind the man who lived there. So
Okay.
I took some pieces of an actual true crime event
Hmm.
and I built my story around it.
Okay.
So,
Interesting.
yeah.
And you also, to add to this long list of accomplishments, you recently joined House of Stitched as an editor and a writer. You could tell us a little bit about that?
So I joined the House of Stitch in last September
Okay.
as a writer, editor as well, of course. And that's been fun. I do a couple articles and a poem, I think, for each issue that we have,
Okay.
as well as we have a WordPress blog that we also run.
Hmm.
And I do a weekly post there that's called Haunted Locations.
Okay.
So every week I post a new haunted location and the history behind it. And I've done locations all over the states and all over the world and different things like that. For the last month or so, we've been doing a haunted object instead of a location just to change it up a little bit.
Okay.
And then in May of this year, I was named VP for the House of Stitch for the magazine.
See, this is what I'm talking about. See, all these accomplishments. You're really doing it out here.
Just been acting as the VP and trying to help out a little bit more, and it's allowed me the chance to learn a lot more about how everything works at
Right.
magazine, and kind of getting my feet wet a little bit more rather than just as a writer. And I've been able to see how the inner workings of it work a little bit more than what I was just as like a writer. And it's
Okay.
going well. It's been an amazing experience. So
Okay.
I'm doing that right now. The Halloween issue should be dropping on Amazon here any day. So
Okay. Great.
yeah,
So, where can readers find your books?
where can well on Amazon right now.
Mhm.
Everything is on Amazon.
Okay.
You can order signed copies of everything on my website as well. The anthology is beginning to appear in some stores.
Okay.
And if you own a bookstore or anything, you can order it from Ingram Spark. It is out
Okay.
there to be ordered.
Okay.
Feel free.
All right.
But yeah, for right now, everything is on Amazon. It is on Kindle Unlimited, my website, and as over the winter, I will be moving everything to go to Ingram's Park as well. So hopefully you'll begin to see a lot of my print stuff in some stores near you soon.
Okay. And the website is uncomfortablydark.com.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And where can we find you on social media?
You can find me everywhere. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok.
Okay.
They're uncomfortably dark.
Okay.
I have a link tree as well, so if you look me up there, you'll be able to see all of my links. That'll take you to absolutely everything that I have and do. And follow me, like and subscribe on all those sites, and
All right.
stay
Absolutely.
tuned for more because there's a lot more coming this year.
All right. Well, I can imagine. I mean, look at all what you've done so far. So I'm expecting and waiting for all the rest of it to happen.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your time and your talents with us today. I appreciate you being here with me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're most welcome. And y'all know what time it is. At the end of every show, I leave you with a quote. And today's quote comes from Jordan Peele, actor, comedian, and filmmaker. And he says, "I'm obsessed with giving the audience something they don't see coming." Until next time, y'all, you know what to do. Grab a book and read. And I'm out.
You've been listening to Between the Reads.
I'm your host, Audra Russell. Thanks for lending me your ear. If you enjoy this content, please consider supporting this independent podcast by becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/betweenthereads or making a one-time donation at www.ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. That's www.ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. Tune in next week for another great episode.